Lurkers explores the dark side of the online world. It contains adult themes and disturbing content for mature audiences only.
It was late. The streets of Elizabeth, New Jersey sat in heavy silence. Streetlights flashed across Tiffany Taylor's face, each strobe catching her wide, terrified eyes. Next to her, behind the wheel, was a man she thought, only minutes ago, would simply thank her for the ride and step out of her car. Instead, she was in pain, her wrists cuffed, bruises already blooming. He stopped in front of the Ritz Motel, moving with sudden urgency. The car door flew open. He dragged her out as she scrambled to pull her pants back up. They climbed the narrow stairs of the two-story building, his footsteps close behind. Halfway up, Tiffany fastened the pace. At the top, she bolted, darting into her room and slamming the door shut. His voice roared from the other side. "Come back out. Come back out. You lied." Tiffany's fingers worked furiously, sliding one wrist free from the cuff. She yanked open the curtain of the motel's room window and pressed the metal restraints against the glass, dangling them like a dare. He froze, then turned and vanished into the night. Inside, Tiffany tried to catch her breath long enough to dial 911. She'd made it out alive, but little did she know that 3 women before her hadn't been so lucky. In a world where connection is effortless, every click feels safe. But online, trust can be deceiving. This is Lurkers, true stories of trust, desire, and how technology, if unchecked, can turn it all against us. Before that night, on November 15, 2016, 33-year-old Tiffany Taylor was already fighting uphill. Through her 20s, she had endured more than most could bear, losing her mother, surviving an abusive relationship, giving birth to her second child, and getting kicked out of her apartment. With nowhere else to go, she checked into the Ritz Motel in Elizabeth, New Jersey. She was doing sex work to get by, and like so many invulnerable situations, she'd learned to read people fast, or at least she thought she could. The man she met that night had been introduced through a friend who told her he needed a ride and would pay her for gas. Tiffany texted him the address, and soon he was at her door. They got into the car, him in the passenger seat, and they set off. He had a ski mask and gloves, but she didn't think much of it. As she later told Hulu's How I Caught My Killer, quote, "Everybody in Newark and the Jersey area, all the guys, they wear ski masks and gloves when it starts getting cold," end quote. And on their way, he said he needed to use a bathroom. Tiffany pulled over. He asked her for a cigarette. She handed it to him. And then everything went black. She woke up in the backseat to him raping and choking her. She fought back. She scratched. She kicked. That's when he pulled out the handcuffs, locking her wrists tight behind her. Then came the duct tape over her mouth. She realized then he wasn't going to stop. In a desperate move, she shifted the tape enough to speak and spat out something she hoped would save her. As she recounted on Hulu, quote, "I know I left my phone in the room with all the texts going back and forward. Everything is on that phone. When the police find my phone, They're gonna pick up on it quick. End quote. The bluff worked. He panicked and drove back to the Ritz Motel, a ride that gave Tiffany just enough time to think about the few happier moments in her life worth fighting for. So, when she made that move, bolting for that motel room, logging him out, and dialing 911, she felt it. That flash of victory. But the feeling of survival? No. It was only a pause in the nightmare. From behind that same window, that glass in the room that had been her shield between life and death, she watched as police pulled up. Relief turned to outrage when they refused to believe her. Instead, they accused her of prostitution and even threatened to arrest her. What she didn't know then was that the courage she showed that night and the relentless determination of friends who refused to let another woman vanish would soon enough become the key to bringing justice for 3 other women who never made it home. Way before Tiffany's narrow escape, there were 3 other women, all of them young, all of them hopeful, all of them never made it home. The first was Robin West. She was 19, vibrant, outgoing, a dancer with a smile that could light up a room. Her father, Reverend Leroy West, described her as energetic, full of life, and said the biggest thing they had in common was music. Friends called her a free spirit, someone who could walk into a crowd of strangers and leave with a handful of new friends. But life hadn't been easy. She and her best friend Bernicia had known each other since they were 14. Together, they had a risky side hustle in Philadelphia, meeting clients online and arranging hotel meetups as sex workers. They always paired up to watch each other's backs. In the fall of 2016, with Robin's 20th birthday on the horizon, the two decided to head up the turnpike to North Jersey to celebrate. They stayed at a motel in Union Township for a few nights, until they ran out of money. Then came the idea to try street work in a new city. On August 31st, 2016, Robin arrived on Nye Avenue in Newark for her first night on the street. Around 11 p.m., one of the first cars to pull up was a silver BMW, driven by a young, good-looking man that Bernicia described as charming. Robin got in. Before she closed the door, Bernicia called out, quote, "Take care of my sister. I love her," end quote. And just in case, she snapped a photo of the BMW's license plate. Three hours later, at 2 a.m., and about 7 miles away in Orange, New Jersey, firefighters responded to a blaze tearing through an abandoned house. It was a 5-alarm fire that drew crews from 5 cities. When the flames were finally under control, the cause was declared arson, and inside, they found a body burned beyond recognition. By sunrise, Robin still hadn't called or texted. Her father couldn't reach her either. Bernicia went to the Newark police to report her missing. She gave them the man's description and the BMW's license plate, but Robin was still considered just missing, so investigators didn't even run the plate. Then, 2 weeks later, on September 13, 2016, the body from the fire was finally identified through dental records. It was Robin. She had been strangled before her body was dumped in the abandoned house and set on fire. The news shattered those who loved her. Robin's father still remembers that crushing moment when he was told they found her. He said to WHYY, the NPR affiliate in Philadelphia, quote, "I immediately got excited and said, 'Let's put some gas in the car and go get her.' End quote. Only to learn a second later by Robin's mother, it was her body. The case quickly went cold. Robin's lifestyle led some investigators to assume it was a bad date, a money dispute, or the result of street violence. That assumption slowed the urgency to connect her murder to any other case. The truth? Her killer was already watching for the next opportunity, and just 3 months later, he found it. Just 2 months after Robin West's body was discovered in that abandoned house, another woman vanished. Her name was Joanne Brown, but everyone called her Jo. She was 33, known for her warm laugh, quick wit, and resilience. Her friends Ashley Battle and Fernicia Hill described her as humble, bubbly, and vibrant, someone with a heart of gold who could listen without judgment. Her life had been marked by hardship. She'd grown up in foster care where she had been abused by foster brothers, cousins, and uncles. She had been hurt her entire life, and she wanted more than anything, love and family. She dreamed of becoming a model and a mother. By 2016, Jo was struggling to make ends meet. Like Robin, she drifted in and out of Newark's street sex work scene, sometimes seeking companionship online. As she once told friends, quote, "Some people don't have other options," end quote. On October 22, 2016, South Newark, it was about 1 p.m. when Jo was outside of Popeye's restaurant with friends. That's when a silver BMW pulled up. Her friends noticed the man inside looking at her. That memory of the moment Jo caught his eye still haunts them. She got into the car. Just before they left, another woman in the group asked to borrow Jo's phone to make an urgent call. Jo handed it over, meaning she drove off without it. A few minutes later, realizing she didn't have her phone, Jo borrowed his. She called her friend Amina and said she was safe. 2.5 hours later, Amina's phone rang again, the same number Jo had called from.
Hello?
She answered. Silence. No one spoke. Then she called back. No one picked up. When Jo didn't show up that evening, Amina went to Newark police the next day to report her missing and gave them the suspicious phone number. Law enforcement didn't act immediately. That same number, by coincidence, would be the one that Tiffany Taylor, our survivor from the beginning of the story, would try to give police 24 days later during her own encounter. Jo's friends felt ignored, so they became detectives. They checked every hospital and psych ward, called every jail she could have been in. Nothing. Weeks went by. Jo was gone without a trace, and the fear set in that whatever happened to her wasn't random. By then, her killer had already moved on to the next victim. Her name? Sarah Butler. Sarah Butler was 19 years old, a Montclair State University sophomore with a magnetic smile and a love for the arts. Her family described her as the life of the party, someone who could light up a room without trying. She was vibrant, ambitious, fiercely close to her family in Montclair. She loved to dance, loved to laugh, and wasn't shy about chasing her goals. She was the first in her family to go to college, a dream both she and her loved ones were working hard to afford. On November 22, 2016, just days before Thanksgiving, Sarah borrowed her mother's new van and left home. She told her parents she'd be meeting friends. When she didn't return that night, her parents grew worried. Sarah was close to her sisters and always kept in touch. They called, they texted, nothing. Her phone stayed silent. By the next morning, her mother went to Montclair police to report her missing. Without hard evidence, they didn't act. But the Butlers didn't wait around. they started searching themselves and found nothing. It was 3 days later that it had a break. Sarah's sister best friend spotted the family's van parked on the other side of town. Police met the butlers at the scene. Inside, they found something haunting. The same red hair Sarah had worn the night she vanished. Beyond that, no evidence. But it was enough for both family and investigators to know something was very wrong. Sarah's sister and friends dug into her online accounts, Facebook, and tagged the dating app. And there it was, the chilling exchange. Sarah had agreed to meet a man using a handle Lil Yacht Rock. Her friends said she was normally cautious about meeting strangers, but according to their account as they followed Sarah's digital footprint, she had only been messaging with him briefly before he offered her $500 for sex. She hesitated, but for someone juggling tuition bills, quick money from someone who seemed safe online might have been tempting. And here's the part that still stops me cold. Hulu's How I Caught My Killer reveals that after agreeing, she messaged jokingly, quote, "You're not a serial killer, right? LMAO." End quote. If only she knew her unheard gut feelings were right. He took her need and turned it into her vulnerability. He told her to pick him up on November 23rd at a house in Orange, New Jersey. And then, silence. That's when Sarah's sister and her friends came up with a bold plan. Pose as another woman on tag, message Lil Yacht Rock, and bait him into meeting. They built a profile designed to hook him, right down to the photos and flirty banter. Then, they brought their findings to Montclair police, and as they were literally walking into the station, Lil Yacht Rock messaged back, using the exact same approach he had used with Sarah. Detectives helped craft a reply and set the meeting at a Panera Bread. Boom, case closed, right? Yeah. No. When the big moment came, only 2 Montclair officers showed up. They asked a few questions, peeked inside the trunk of what looked like a spotless silver BMW driven by a clean-cut 19-year-old, and let him go. To be fair, they did invite him to the station. They interviewed him. He admitted meeting Sarah that night, but claimed she dropped him off and he never saw her again. And of course, like many of us know, being young, polite, and oh so helpful is always a good exception to any serial killer, right? I mean, look at Ted Bundy. Was he ugly? The problem was that Sarah's location was still a mystery, and without stronger evidence, there wasn't much to go on. But remember Tiffany Taylor, the motel survivor from the start of the story? Her attack had happened just a week earlier, and only 13 miles away from the cozy Panera meet and greet. At first, no one connected the dots. Later, police would admit the similarities were chilling. Finally, on December 4th, 2016, 12 days after Sarah vanished, investigators secured her phone records and traced the last cell tower ping. Near a parking lot in Eagle Rock Reservation, they found her body. She had been strangled, just like Robin West and Joanne Brown. Under Sarah's fingernails, they recovered the perpetrator's DNA, and now they could match it to the suspect whose online messages, location data, and physical appearance tied every thread together. Police then executed a search warrant at his home. In his bedroom, they found 2 cell phones belonging to the woman. The coroner also collected his DNA, which matched the sample from beneath Sarah's fingernails. With that, they made the arrest. Sadly, just 1 day after his arrest, police made another grim discovery: Joanne Brown's body, left in an abandoned home in Highland Avenue in Newark. It was chillingly close to where Robin West's burned remains had been found just weeks earlier, and investigators would later confirm the same abandoned house where Sarah Butler had been strangled. But this time, there was no fire to mask the truth. All 3 women had been killed the same way, strangled. All 4 women had been wrapped in duct tape. And the name of the perpetrator? Khalil Wheeler Weaver. For detectives, the pattern was undeniable. 3 women, Robin West, Joanne Brown, and Sarah Butler, all gone. 1 survivor, Tiffany Taylor, who had lived to tell. And guess what? The night Khalil Wheeler Weaver was arrested, Tiffany Taylor's brother was watching the local news. The suspect's photo flashed on screen, and the pieces locked into place. He called Tiffany, forwarded the link. She didn't even hesitate. Right off the bat, she knew it was him. In court, Victor Butler, Sarah's father, held his wife close as she wiped away tears, staring at the man accused of killing their daughter. Across just 84 days in 2016, Khalil Wheeler Weaver had hunted and killed Sarah Butler, Robin West, and Joanne Brown. Tiffany Taylor had barely escaped with her life. Tiffany knew she had to testify. She told Hulu's How I Caught My Killer, quote, "The first time I saw him in court, I remember I jumped out of my skin. I felt like I couldn't breathe," end quote. Her testimony laid out his method, the common thread binding all the cases: duct tape over the mouth, rape, strangulation, a precise, controlled way of attacking his victims. Wheeler Weaver had grown up in New Jersey. To many, he was an outsider, a nerd. He came from a good family. No one imagined the darkness lurking beneath. But Tiffany had seen both sides of him, the polite, eager to help mask, and the predator beneath. It took 3 years to get to trial. Finally, in September 2019, it began. He faced 3 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, rape, arson, and desecration of human remains, and the evidence was damning. Now that investigators had his phone, they could connect every single dot, every message, every search, every movement. Robin West's father remembered how Wheeler Weaver never cracked. No expression, no remorse, nothing. He had tracked his victims using his phone, planned their deaths on the same device, and in the end, those same tools became his undoing. When prosecutors wheeled in the boxes of evidence, they stood as tall as Wheeler Weaver himself. The trial lasted 3 months. The jury needed only 2 hours. Guilty on all 11 counts. According to the Washington Post via the Associated Press, Tiffany's voice was one of the last the jury heard. Looking directly at him, she said, quote, "My whole life is different. I don't wear makeup anymore. I don't have friends. I'm always paranoid, but I'm happy to still be here. I hope you don't show him any remorse, because he's not showing any remorse." End quote. Then, Sarah Butler's father, Victor Butler, stood before the court. His words were direct and unforgiving. Quote, "I hope that he lives for a very long time, and they make him suffer every night in there, like he made our girl suffer." End quote. He said, as reported by the Washington Post. Then, locking eyes with Wheeler Weaver, he added, quote, "I hope you suffer, boy, every night." End quote. In October 2021, he was sentenced to 160 years in prison. The judge was clear. The sentence was meant to ensure Khalil Wheeler Weaver would never walk among society again. But the most chilling detail? A month after his conviction, police discovered yet another body. A 15-year-old girl named Maua Dumbia. She had been strangled and left face down in an abandoned house. It took the courage of a survivor, the determination of grieving family and friends, and the digital trail he thought would protect him to finally bring him down. Technology was his weapon, but in the end, it became the trap that caught him. It's easy after the fact to say, I would never have fallen for that, or I would have seen it coming, or even they had it coming. Yes, we all know how our minds tend to work, but the truth is, we all have our voids. We all have moments where we want to believe the version of someone they show us, online, in a message, behind a profile picture. That's what makes technology such a double-edged sword. It can connect us in ways no generation before us has ever experienced. But in the wrong hands, it can be a weapon, a hunting ground. Khalil Wheeler Weaver used it to find women at their most vulnerable state. And for a long time, the people who should have stopped him didn't, because they judged too quickly. They assumed, and those assumptions delayed justice. But in the end, it wasn't law enforcement alone that brought him down. It was bravery. It was friendship. It was human connection, the kind that has been part of her survival for thousands of years. 3 friends, unwilling to let another woman disappear, used the same tech he used to lure victims to trap him. Social media isn't good or bad. It's a tool, one that reflects both the best and the worst of what we choose to do with it. Remember Robin West. Remember Joanne Brown. Remember Sarah Butler. And remember Tiffany Taylor, the one who lived to tell. Stay aware, stay present, stay safe. This episode of Lurkers was written by me, Frank Battiston, research and story development by Julia Lawrence, and production and sound design by Daniel Erdenevia. If this story shook you to your core, like it did us, share it with someone you love and tell them why. Your ratings and reviews help others discover these stories, and every share helps keep their voices alive. Follow Lurkers on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so you'll be here for the next one. Thank you for listening.